On at your convenience, and there we go. So welcome all. Maple Broadband Governing Board meeting today, December 10. Time is 5:04 p.m. I'll be calling today's meeting to order. Ellie sent out the agenda several days ago. I think it was late last week. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Okay, and I saw Nancy had her hand up there, so there's a second. All in favor of approving the agenda, raise your hand or say aye. Excellent. Thanks all. Minutes. Ellie distributed the minutes concurrent with the agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Got a motion from Nancy, a second from someone, from Shannon. Any discussion on that? Any issues there?
Good.
Okay, all in favor of approving the November 12 minutes, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Okay, excellent. Next, public comments. Open the floor to any comments that the public might have.
Just wondering if the person at 349-5332 can identify themselves.
This is Spence. I couldn't get on to the video today.
Hi, Spence. Thank you for joining us.
Okay. Public comments? No public comments? Okay. Well, I'm going to make this brief. I think this is going to be a pretty busy meeting today, so I'm going to make my little presentation short once I can figure out which end is up here. Okay. Briefly, we'll go down to the South Territory. We've kind of, when we're talking with our stakeholders within Maple Broadband's organization, we kind of break up our CUD into two territories. The South Territory includes what you can see here: Shore, Morwell, Cornwall, Leicester, Whiting, etc. And the best report here is that we've been grinding away trying to complete the Leicester hub on the lower right corner of the diagram, and we did have the route running from the Leicester hub to the Cornwall hub complete several weeks ago, and because of some technical problems, we were experiencing some delays in extending service from Leicester to Orwell, but those we've overcome those obstacles, and we now have our network resilient, so that if there's an outage in any of these hubs, with the actual electronics in the hubs and whatnot, subscribers can still be served without any service interruption. So that's kind of been our goal since we started with this effort. And I kind of will talk about this a little bit more, but I also noted here on the right that the construction we've done almost entirely has been funded by the American Rescue Plan grant program, and it's because of that we're, we have as much of our network completed as we do. This is the North Territory hub. It looks a little bit simpler. It's only because we only have one hub in Virgins, and it's large enough to accommodate all the subscribers in that North Territory, which is Virgins, Ferrisburg, Moncton, etc. Again, grant funded pretty much exclusively by ARPA, and I just kind of wanted to underscore that. And from my perspective, we really are really completed a lot of work, and we have a little bit cleanup that we're going to be doing in the next couple months, but it really is kind of peripheral to what we're trying to accomplish. And construction is essentially going to be delayed for a while. Back before the election in November, we were running into all kinds of probably expected delays with the BEAD grant program that we're involving ourselves in. And because of those delays, I think Ellie and I were hoping we could have resumed construction, say, midway into 2025. But because of red tape, basically, I think if you're optimistic, we will not be resuming construction until the latter part of next year. And if you want to be pessimistic, I'm not going to talk about that. I think there's plenty to worry about, but I think the one thing I want everyone on the governing board to be aware of is the fact that we're putting one foot in front of the other, doing everything we can to make sure that we're prepared for the BEAD grant, which will allow us to continue construction and fulfill our expected obligations. So no change in our pace or in any of the tasks we're engaged in. We might run into some unexpected challenges after we have a new president and a new Senate and House, but we're not going to contemplate that. We're going to deal with it when it comes across. So at this point, we're expecting the best here, and we're going to continue to take all necessary steps to ensure that when the BEAD program is successful applicants are announced, that we'll be on that list. Questions for that? That's pretty much my report.
We got to improve the site last night.
I'm sorry, could you repeat, please?
Oh, Steve?
Yes.
At the Addison Central board meeting last night, which ran late, the permission to use the area off of Mary Hogan Drive for one of our centers has been approved, and it's also been approved by the Board of Selectmen. So I think if Jason Chance hasn't already contacted you, he should soon.
Yeah, thank you. And so kind of to dig a little deeper, we can maybe talk about it later in the meeting, but our part of those plans that we're not halting or changing at all is we are, Ellie and I specifically are working on preparing to place electronics to put another hub in Middlebury and another hub in Ripton. And then those two hubs would represent the final construction of the new electronics in our network. So we've, to your point, we've got one more obstacle that's been removed. We've got to wait, as I understand, before we know about what happens with Ripton. We do have some information into them to let them give some thought to. And with any luck, we'll get an okay on that. And then we'll kind of just check that box and continue to proceed. But yeah, just to kind of manifestation of what I said, we're not slowing down. We're doing whatever we need to do to keep pushing along, and we'll deal with whatever we need to as we go forward. And if we run into any challenges, we'll always keep everyone on the governing board up to speed. Any other comments? Okay. That's my chair report. Under updates, I think maybe the comment about the easement in Middlebury for a Middlebury hub is great news. That was one of the big announcements to make. It's just kind of a first step, but still it's a necessary step. So one less thing to worry about as we move forward. And I guess, Ellie, do you have any kind of, I know you've got some other kind of construction related efforts that we want to be doing in the next couple months. Can you expand on that at all?
Do you mean what's going live shortly, Steve, or some of the other plans after that?
Both.
Sure. Okay. So we had hoped that it would be live by now, but a couple of areas that are adjacent to the hub in Leicester, we are finishing the splicing and testing this week. It was delayed a little bit due to weather and some other technical challenges, but that's planned to be up before the end of the year. And then there's also a buried crew that's in town right now that's doing a couple of small buried sections. So there's Oliver Howe Court in Shoreham and Butt Road, and then there's a little buried section up in Waltham that's going to enable us to get to some people on the other side of. There's just too long of a distance between poles, so we had to bury. So that work may not be completed by the end of the year, maybe early January. And then to Steve's point, after that, we have, that's essentially going to wrap up what we've planned for the short term. And then the next step is to use the remaining funds we have on our construction grants, as well as the town ARPA and the town ARPA match, and figure out the best use of that money. So that's something that I've started working on, and when I have those plans, I'll be bringing them to the executive committee and then on to you folks.
Great, thank you. Could you just move on to BEAD then?
Sure. So you've covered part of BEAD, Steve. I think possibly the important part. So the BEAD pre-application period for the state of Vermont is now open. It opened last week Tuesday, I think, and it's staying open through sometime in early January, but our express intent is to get our pre-application in this month so that no one has to be thinking about it or worrying about it, myself included, over the holiday period. The pre-application is fairly straightforward. We essentially have to say who we are and provide some information about ourselves and give some information like what's our estimated request of the amount of money we're going to be asking for under the program. And quite importantly, we also can put in at this point requests for any changes to the project area. So the project area is the boundary of our communications union district, but within that, and that's perfectly fine as far as it goes. The requirement of the BEAD program is that every unserved and underserved address that they know about needs to get service as part of this grant. And so Steve and I have been going through a process, and Waitsfield is doing the same thing on their side, to identify things that are clearly not actual locations that need broadband service, like trailheads and hunting cabins and empty fields and things along those lines. So we're going through the steps of gathering the required evidence to be able to essentially say these are locations that we request be omitted from our project area, because it's Steve mentioned earlier the red tape, and so the NTIA has the requirement that you have to serve every address, but at the same time, obviously no one wants to be funding fiber to nowhere. I mean, that doesn't make sense for anyone, certainly not the NTIA and not grantees who have to come up with a 25% match. So this is the process the VCB has defined, and we are going through that. And so really just gathering, I think we've gathered all or almost all the evidence now. There's a couple more screenshots possibly we may need to take, and I need to write up the narratives around it. And Waitsfield needs to do the same thing. So that's really the long pole in the tent in terms of getting the pre-application in. And then we sit back and wait because the VCBB is going to take all the pre-application period, and then the full application window opens, I believe, in March through the middle of April. So, but the good news is we don't have to sit around and wait. They published their request for applications, which gives us all the information we need for the full application. And probably the hardest part of that is not too dissimilar from the Act 71 construction grants. They require a comprehensive business model to make sure that whoever they're funding is not a fly-by-night entity that's just going to go under. So that's all perfectly fine. There's nothing in the application that particularly worries me. It's really just work. And then we have the complexity in our application that we're doing it in partnership with Waitsfield, because there's addresses that we're going to be serving that are in our portion of the district, and there's addresses they're going to be serving in their portion of the district. So we essentially, all the questions that they're asking in the application, we kind of have to answer twice. So there's a little bit of nuance around that, but at least we're not going to be having to write the narratives for the Waitsfield side. We just have to assemble and compile everything.
Ellie, when we did the grant process for the ARPA construction grant, my recollection was there was a pre-application, and then after that we were invited. I think what the VCBB did is they took a look at our pre-application information, concluded that we were viable, at which point they invited us to bid. Can we expect to be invited to bid as part of the bid process?
It's not exactly like that. So the way that the bid process works is that they're going to be considering all of the bids they get in the full application window, and in order to place a bid in the full application window, you must have placed a bid. You must have submitted a pre-application, and only in the event that a project area receives no pre-applications will the VCB allow entities to submit bids. So it's kind of the opposite of the way it worked in ARPA, where if you want to participate in the program, you have to fill out the pre-application first. But it's a fundamentally different program because the Act 71, the legislature created the Vermont Community Broadband Fund, and as part of that, they said that A, the money is going to go preferentially to the CUDs, and B, the VCB had allocated the amount of money to each CUD. So we knew the allocation that was essentially sitting there waiting for us to qualify for it. And this is fundamentally different because it's a competitive program. So we may have Consolidated bid against us, we may have Comcast bid against us, we may have no one bid against us. Might have Ellie's, probably not Ellie's ISP, but Joe's ISP could bid against us for all we know. So we really have to put our best foot forward, and I guess I should also say, as part of the BEADS RFA, there's essentially mandatory elements that you have to do. Like you have to be able to prove that you're an entity which is going to be capable of taking the money and doing the right thing with it. Things like having been around for a while, having audited financials, things like that, and then and having the financial and managerial capacity to be able to take the money and do something with it. And then the second part is where you submit answers to the questions that are going to be scored so that they can rank people. They can rank bids against each other, because it's not happily, it's not just the lowest bid wins. They're taking into account a number of other factors, including community involvement and things like that.
Great, thank you. Any questions from everyone regarding construction or BEAD? Okay. I don't think we have anything under other, do we, Ellie?
No, and we want to save as much time as we can for the marketing plan presentation later, because you guys are going to love it.
Gotcha. All right. Let's move on to financial and the dashboard. Our treasurer transition happens at the end of the year. Cy is still our treasurer. So I'm guessing, Cy, you can talk to us about the dashboard.
Would you like me to share my screen, Cy? Or do you want to do it?
I think I've got it right here, Ellie. I'll pop it up.
Great.
I hope I have it up. Do I have it up?
Okay.
There we go. I think you will see that November's been relatively quiet.
You're not sharing your screen yet.
Oh, that's weird. Let's see. Share this window. Share. Yes?
Yeah.
Yep.
You see? Okay,
Yeah.
good. So the front page, in terms of what happened in November, relatively quiet, all things considered. No cash coming in, although we're waiting on an outstanding invoice that we've sent to VCCB for construction money, but no major expenses. So these numbers have not changed significantly at this point, and everything looks pretty good. The budget versus actual, again, we're still in pretty good shape. I will point out only that in the merchant credit card fees, I think this number has not yet filtered through to the P&L, where I pull the numbers when I'm working on this report. And I suspect that we have not spent only $84.03 in merchant credit card fees. Probably more like $700 in merchant credit card fees. But I have asked our bookkeeper to go back and pull that figure out so that we can clean it up. So assume that that's a little bit higher, but we're still in good shape across the board, really. And are staying amazingly close to the work that Ellie did when she kind of looked at this this budget again. And so we will finish up presumably really close, actually probably under what we anticipated for 2004. And we'll talk more about that when Ellie talks about the budget specifically. Operations, Ellie, I'll let you speak to the operations, but everything looks like it's in pretty good shape here.
Yeah, I think the things I want to call your attention to here is I had projected the last time I reviewed the business plan in October that we would have the additional 14 miles or so that I just described earlier live by the end of November, and that didn't happen. So we're 14.2 miles behind our plan, but that'll happen this month and we'll catch it up. And yeah, we only had 13 installations last month. And so you will have all seen that one of the things we're running at the moment is we're running a marketing promo trying to get people to sign up, because when we launched service, we had a whole bunch of installations and then the pipeline's been a little bit dry. So we're running a promo to try and get people to sign up, as well as upgrade their speed. And we're doing a donation to local food shelves. So we have seen more people signing up than had been the trend. But of course, it takes time to get them installed. So not showing up yet in the installation numbers. And yeah, other than that, there's not really anything else I want to say here. But if anyone has any questions, of course, we can answer it.
I would point out as well that the ARPU, the sort of the return per customer, is staying ahead of where we had planned on being, which is really, really good and really important. Any other questions about this? And I will take that down.
Well, we got you, Si.
Yeah.
Have an audit update for us?
The endless audits.
Mhm.
Yes, we actually, Ellie and our bookkeeper and I had a conversation with the auditor this morning so that we could really determine what exactly she wanted and how she wanted it in terms of all of the expenses that have become network assets. And I think we kind of nailed that down. So Ellie is working on the last bit of her piece of it, and we'll be sending that off to the auditor. And God willing, and the creek don't rise, which, based on the weather report tomorrow, maybe the creek will rise. But we should have this cleaned up and ready for you guys at your next meeting. We'll see. If anything, if all goes well, knock on wood, we'll have our final audit done before the year is over. Ellie, do you think that's a fair assessment?
I think it might be a little bit optimistic,
Well,
just because our auditor
Bonnie's
is going
going
on vacation.
That's right.
She's going on vacation after next week, Monday. So, and Darlene is also, Darlene has some things that she has to do. But you're quite right. We now understand in what format she wants to see our calculations in order to understand them. So we have all the source data. We just need to put it in the right format for her, and we need her to be able to look at it, which realistically, I think is probably more likely to happen in early January at this point, unfortunately.
The very nice thing, actually, that she agreed to today was to, as many of you probably know, since you deal with business, when you get to the end of the year, your auditor kind of shuts off your access to QuickBooks, and so that you can't make any accidental changes to anything as you're going along. And this morning, the auditor sort of opened it back up and said, go in there, make all the, based on the conversation that we just had, you make the changes and then we'll do this and see if all the numbers line up, which they should, based on the tremendous amount of work that Ellie and Darlene have done. So with any luck, this will be tidy and clean very soon. And I'm sorry it's taken so long, but better to have it right than to have it mucked up and someone else has to clean it up in the future.
Yep.
Yeah, at a high level, I think the one thing that I've noticed, I'm not the financial guy, but I listen to what Si and everybody's talking about and what we've been going through in past years. In past years, the audit got done sooner, but this year is new for a number of reasons. One, I think, is the biggest one that I've seen is the work that Ellie's put into asset capitalization. which is just a grind the way I understand it. So one of the things I think I'd asked Cy a month or so ago was, once we get through this year, have we kind of created a template for 2025 that would result in a more timely outcome?
That's exactly what we've done, and the challenge, and you know, auditors are supposed to stay far, far away from you, and our auditor has tippy-toed as close to the line as she can to advise us as we go along. But yes, that's exactly what we've done, is to sort of line up, get this set as a template so that, and we've already started actually with all of the 2024 stuff, to move it according to what she has recommended, so that on a monthly and then moving forward, probably a quarterly basis, to make sure that the network assets, those things that are now, it's basically all of the phases of our work that we have done where people have work, those are now assets. So we have to depreciate them accordingly, and it means we need to get the numbers right. But we've set it up at long last, I think, so that we know exactly how to slide that into place. So it should be a little simpler for you, Lynn, when you're looking at next year's audit. But yes, that is definitely what's taken the time. We never had assets before this, real assets. And to get these assets logged properly is really, really important going forward. So better to be really slow and get it right than to rush and get it wrong, and then someone else has to clean it up later.
Thank you. Any other questions of Cy or Ellie on our audit or the dashboard? Okay.
Thank you all for your patience.
Yeah. Yeah, we haven't had them rioting in the streets or anything like that, so that's a good sign, I think. Ellie, are you going to help us with the draft budget and annual report?
I will do. Let me share my screen. So this was distributed to you all. So by statute, as you know, we need to, by the end of the year, distribute to our member towns our budget for the next year, our pro forma, which is our projection through the close of this year. This is these two columns respectively. And we also need to have an annual report. So I'll call up the annual report once we're done looking at this. So we passed this in October the first time around. I sent it out to all of our member towns for comment. We had the hearing last month. I have received no comment from the member towns. I'm not sure if anyone here has. We had the hearing last month and didn't have any changes to it then. I have made, as I think I said in the mail, there was a couple of changes that I made on the proposed operating expenses side, and I highlighted those in orange along with some comments as to what they are. So, but basically it was just moving money around within the different marketing buckets, and then some of the expenses from the BEAD subrecipient capacity grant that we had previously expected to spend this year, we're now expecting to spend next year due to the aforementioned delays in BEAD. But other than that, it's essentially looks the same as what was already approved in October on the budget side. And then the 2024 pro forma has been updated, and I think it's probably reasonably accurate because we're sitting here in December, and so the numbers, we have actuals through the end of November, and so I did my best to estimate what the outlays will be in the month of December. So that's that. Does anyone have any questions on the budget or the pro forma?
Ellie, this is Paul.
Hey, Paul.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, do you get positive confirmation from the towns that they've received the information that you sent them? I'm kind of worried a little bit. Nobody's providing any feedback.
No one has ever provided any feedback in all the years I've been distributing this.
They don't even say we received it? Zero?
I think some of the towns responded to say they received it. Usually I get more acknowledgement at the end of year because that email, I mean, the email does say, hey, you know, we're soliciting your feedback and we're having a hearing and so on. So usually I get more feedback at the end of year because it contains the annual report and the little blurb that we're working on for their inclusion in their annual report. And some of the towns have reached out proactively already to say, hey, I'm the town annual report contact. Please make sure that you send me this information. So,
All right, thanks.
yep, my pleasure.
I think what if we take a look at the annual report? This is pretty dry stuff, but I think that one of the things that I thought when I first saw this document was that it's beautiful and it's comprehensive, and it covers some of the areas that had not previously been covered in past years. And you're going to receive, once we all approve this, you're going to receive a copy of it, all of our delegates and alternates. And we hope you'll get out there and maybe get a slot at the next select board meeting and review it with the select board, so they all know what we're doing in their town. I think it's not only an impressive document, but it's also very comprehensive. And that's kind of what I'm most interested in, is trying to encourage all of our delegates and alternates to get out there and evangelize what we're doing. We're accomplishing a lot, and we have a very lean organization doing all that, and it should have some effect, and it should also kind of cultivate support of our organization, which is part of what we're asking Ashley and her organization to help us with, help kind of evangelize what we're doing, really get them engaged and things like that. So we would very much appreciate our delegates and alternates helping along with that whenever you can.
Yep. And Steve, I want to pause on this because I distributed a version Friday night, and Ashley was kind enough to put up with me going back and forth and saying, I'm still not happy with the map. I'm still not happy with the map. It's not as clear as it could be. So this is the proposed final version of the map, which I think you can more clearly see the darker colors of what went into active service this year. And you can also more easily clearly see what is Maple versus what's Waitsfield. And then we also put the boundaries of towns in here so that people can more easily see where they're sitting in the world. So I didn't distribute this because we got it close enough to the meeting that I didn't want to be sending it out, and people may not have had a chance to look before the meeting, but I'll send it out after. But this is the version. Other than that, it's identical to what you looked at on Friday night with this change. And then there was one small wording change actually here, which is that we want to be clear that we had service across portions of 12 towns. We didn't want anyone thinking we had service across the entirety of 12 towns. Thank you to Nancy for that small bit. But other than that, it's exactly the same as what I distributed on Friday night.
I like the color change. I think it makes a difference, Ellie.
Thank you.
Questions about either the budget or the annual report? Let's start the process going. We do need our governing board's approval of this. So just to start the process, I'll move that we approve both the budget and annual report. Is there a second?
Second.
We got a second from Shannon. Discussion. This is your opportunity. If there's anything you're concerned about, please raise it now.
Yeah, I just want to say that report is excellent. I was looking at it earlier, and it really tells a great story, an amazing story. So I'll be happy to make sure that it gets out. You're not going to print any of these, right?
Ellie and I talked about that. I think my concern is it wouldn't be inexpensive. It's multiple pages. So what are you going to do? It's not 4 pages. So how exactly would you do that? How would you want to do it? It could be really costly. My first thought was, let's send 20 copies of this to every select board offices and have them available for people to pick up when they walk away. And then the other option is send a half a dozen to each of our delegates and alternates. But again, one of the things that would have to happen is figure out how to do this, because it's not a 2-sided document. It's multiple pages. It's not 8.5 by 11. I think it's pretty likely it's going to be pretty pricey.
Okay.
Nancy.
Well, let me tell you, oh, sorry. Were you done? So I got a bunch of brochures from WCVT. This was probably 10 months ago or more, and had them put in the town hall or in the town clerk's office. on her desk, the town are there, and I think most of them are still there. So I it'd be nice, to have printed ones, but I think if I want printed one now, I would try to figure out how to print it at home. Enough for the 6 selectmen or something.
Yeah. Zapata.
Yeah, I would second that sentiment of no printed copies. They get lost and it just becomes clutter. And the expense is not necessary. However, if you can send a digital copy to the town clerks, because some towns like Ripton have a town-wide email, that it could just be distributed within the town itself. And conversely, I don't know how Front Porch Forum works with links, but if there's a way of having a link to this document on your website, then that would be another way of sharing it digitally, which I think most people are pretty savvy with at this point.
Yep. Definitely
Nancy.
have plans to do both of those.
Go ahead,
Nancy.
Nancy.
The other thing we're doing is I'm creating a very abridged version of the text of the annual report, and to go into the printed town reports that every town does. And part of that will be the URL. This full annual report will go onto our website, and what goes in the town report will include the URL to that, a link to that place at our website, so people will be able to get to it that way as well.
Great. Yeah, and to what Zapata said, and basically, this is kind of what we're doing now. So every time we're communicating with you, we're pretty much obligated to send it to our select boards. Usually go to the town clerk, and it's up to them to do distribution. And I mean, I have a limited experience of what happens in Ferrisburg. I know what they do there is they make copies of everything to the degree they can and send them out to all the select board members so that everyone has visibility to it. So to your point, Nancy, I think we tried in past years to develop a presence in the town meeting, during town meeting, which is often, or almost maybe always, a booklet that contains, key statistics. Boy, sure seems like a great place to put this. And I know Nancy has tried valiantly to try to get it to appear in those town meeting packages. And I don't know, it doesn't seem to be very effective, but with any luck, we can get some enthusiasm about it this year with that beautiful annual report. Other discussion items, questions, concerns?
Yeah, Steve, this is Ross. I would just say in terms of the town meeting packets, several, numerous 10-page report is probably not going to ever get into a town meeting thing. We could come up with a real short summary. That is possible.
Right. And that's essentially what Nancy has done in years past. Because real often, like, again, I know my own experience with Ferrisburg, it's got to be 1 page. It can't be 2 pages even. And so how do you condense this much information down to 1 page? That's the challenge. Anything else? Okay. So no questions or concerns. I'll call a question. All in favor of approving the budget and annual report, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone. This is really key. This is in our legal obligations that appear under the CUD formation process. So this is another box we got to check. So it's great that we did it. Okay. Do you want to do the introductions on the marketing plan, Ellie?
Sure. So you guys will see a new face here. This is Ashley Sandy from London Middlebury, and she and her team have been absolutely fantastic to work with. So I sent you out as part of the board pack on Friday night. I sent out a link to an online presentation that walked you through the summary of the market research that was done. And so I think I'm just going to turn it over to Ashley to go from here. And maybe, I'm not sure what your slide deck looks like, but maybe if you don't have a slide to just do any Q&A on what was sent out, that might be a good place to start if anyone has any questions. And other than that, over to you to talk about the marketing plan that we've so most of this has come from London Middlebury. I've had a couple of meetings with them to refine it a little bit, and basically we're here tonight to get your thoughts and discussion and hopefully blessing on it. And then given that, we will take it back and refine it further and start getting it implemented.
Thanks, Ellie, and thanks everyone for having us here tonight. My colleague Kelly is on the call as well. A lot of familiar faces in this room, and that's because we had over 325 community members join us in this research process, and that was through the survey that had a lot of great success, stakeholder interviews, customer interviews, and all of those were a result. The result of that was our research report, where you only have a little bit of that you got from Ellie. We have a full 60-page plus report of all of that, what I think is very fun data to see and learn about how folks feel about Maple Broadband in the community, what you're doing, your efforts, and even how you're governed. So before I dive into our deck and share the key initiatives and campaigns we're proposing for 2025. As Ellie said, I'm happy to pause for any questions about the data that was in those slides that were sent out in your board pack last week.
Guess it was really clear.
I would like to say that I think that some of the things that we sort of thought we kind of knew, the work that you did underscored those thoughts, and it was nice to see it in real numbers and real time with percentages and some data to go along with. Gosh, we think that X, but it's nice to see it there so that we actually can move forward based on the real numbers, not just our gut feelings about things.
Absolutely, Sai. It always feels good to have those those hunches validated, and to feel that affirmation of what you're doing. There are also certainly some maybe surprises or areas that might not have been as favorable. And as a market researcher, it's actually very exciting to see those as well, because those could have been blind spots, and now they're true opportunities for us to seize and better position Maple Broadband. Any other questions or thoughts? Yes, Paul.
Yes. What do you think was the biggest surprise that you saw? Could you identify that?
Certainly. I really think that the biggest surprise was that at the end of the day, the consumer is putting their needs first instead of the community's needs first, which isn't, that's certainly a primary trend in consumer behavior. But when we look at the folks in this room right now and how much time you put into your local communities and into this initiative, sometimes it can feel a little discouraging that really it's how fast the internet is and how much it costs. That's the most important thing to them. But as I'll go into in our deck, it's really powerful for us to know that, because that gives us the ability to structure our messaging to appeal to that first, and then really capitalize on that with confirming how much of a community investment this is. So certainly that people might not be as loyal to the mission off the bat as we would like them to be, or might have thought that they were.
Okay, great. Thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions or thoughts? So I promise I'm not just number dropping as far as how long these reports are, but like I said, the final research report is about 60 pages. The final marketing report is 100+ pages. So as we experienced in the executive committee meeting, there's not enough time in any of these meetings to get through all of this. So please feel free to interrupt me with any questions, but I'm going to share my screen and go over what we feel are the highlights to share with you all tonight. Okay, can everyone see my screen? It should say draft marketing ecosystem. Okay, wonderful. Thank you for the thumbs up. So if you, like I mentioned, if you had time to review those research findings in your board pack, you'll have observed a few key things. And for those of you with, all of you, I'm sure, have very busy schedules, I'm happy to bring you up to speed. The first thing is that, like I had mentioned, Maple Broadband is certainly perceived as a premium provider, but we do need to better articulate the value proposition as a community-owned entity, because right now there's that disconnect between the premium pricing and the ability to communicate the value and reasoning behind it. The second big thing was looking at the data from the customer experience analysis. This was one area where we really saw a critical contrast between the superior technical delivery, which, and by that I mean, once people have this service, they are happy. They didn't know what they didn't have, and now they could never go back. And the installation process. There are a lot of communication gaps there. There's an extended time period, and there's certainly frustration pre actually getting service. Those numbers were really clear, and if they certainly stood out to me, and I'm sure they stood out to many of you as well, that 8 of the 9 customers that we interviewed experienced installation frustrations and challenges. So that is a significant pain point that definitely demands our immediate attention. And then the last key research finding area was the competitive analysis, and that revealed certainly both market opportunities and pricing challenges. And those are areas we need to address strategically. But the data also suggests that if we can address those pricing barriers while maintaining the community-focused approach, we're actually in a really good position to capture a significant portion of the dissatisfied customers in the market. And very clearly, those dissatisfied customers aren't ours. We actually have an exceptional satisfaction rate from the folks that we chatted with. So hats off to all of you for that. Like I said, in interest of time, I'd like to share with you the key initiatives that have been developed as the strategic next steps. There's one more piece of information I want to share with you, and I saved this for our chat today. It's that the research revealed, like I had mentioned in response to Paul's question, that at the end of the day, speed, reliability, and price are the most important purchasing factors, not local ownership, which you can see here in a smaller brown box. And in the smallest box here in the red is brand reputation. And that's what the most of the messaging to this point has been leaning into: who you are, what you do, and how you do it, rather than the product itself. So with this really strong indicator from the data, we are proposing a data-driven shift in messaging. And this approach is a layered strategy. So the primary layer leading with the technical aspects, and then having a supporting layer with the brand aspects. You can see here, 61% of survey respondents said that speed and reliability were the most important factors to them. And then the reinvestment commitments and the community focused elements were 15% or 5% and 15% respectively, as how important they were to folks. So this is, like I had said, a really great opportunity for us to identify. It's not a difficult thing to do. It's just something we need to shift a little bit. And to make that a little bit more tangible, I'd like to share an example with you. So currently on the homepage, it opens up with this story about Maple Broadband being the local not-for-profit public entity dedicated to bringing high-speed internet to our 20 member towns in Addison County. This is such a testament to the work that you're doing, but right now it's not capturing the customers that we need to subscribe off the bat. So our proposed shift with the layered messaging approach looks like this. We start with saying there's high-speed fiber internet with guaranteed speeds, like guarantee and reliability being a really important thing folks are looking for, and inserting the town name. So part of the website strategy is to have landing pages for individual towns. Instead of talking about every member town or every town being serviced generally and together, why don't we chat to folks who live in those towns specifically about those towns, have imaging related to their towns, and then even having the names of their delegates too, that so they can see the people, their neighbors that they know that are really part of this in their towns. Then we follow up with the no contracts, no hidden fees, and transparent pricing, because that's the next bit of technical aspects that are important to folks. And then finally, locally owned and operated, investing profits back into Addison County's digital future. So this is just proposed language, but it's here to give you an example that we certainly don't need to eliminate this messaging. We just want to restructure it a little bit. Any questions or thoughts here?
How quickly can we get, if a customer says, I want to check if it's available at my address, how many clicks does it take to get to that point?
Right now, let's see if folks land on the right, or Ellie, if you want to respond to that. I'm not sure if you came off of mute for that, but if folks land on that crowd fiber landing page where a lot of advertisements are sending them, then that's about, I think, a three click after you fill out the forms. And if you don't land on that page, it's quite a few clicks to get to that page and then get that information. So the hope is certainly with the new website to streamline that that experience for folks, and also streamline the crowd fiber experience as well.
Yep. I was gonna say exactly that. And the other thing, Ashley, is at an appropriate point, we're gonna want to go into executive session. So the things that are quite confidential, we are not covering in public session. So I just wanted to give a highlight to you, just to remind you that we need to do that.
Thank you for that, Ellie. I think this would probably be an appropriate time to do that.
Well, perfect timing then.
Thank you. Do we need Steve? Do we need you to do that for us?
We do need Steve to do that for us. Mark has his hand up maybe for a question in the meantime.
Oh, sorry, Mark, go ahead.
Not so much a question. I think it was great work so far, but I was just going to note that be mindful of whether the B on GB for the speed should be capitalized or not. There is definitively a difference in computer speak of a gigabyte and a gigabit.
Yes.
Okay.
Capital G, lowercase BPS.
Apologies, and thank you very much. We recently learned from Ellie about Wi-Fi too, capital W, capital F with a hyphen in between, not making that mistake again. So this one's also added
not with
to the
me.
list. Thank you, Ike.
I move to find that premature general public knowledge regarding Maple Broadband's business strategy would clearly place us at a substantial disadvantage because it risks disclosure of our activities if they were to be communicated to the public. Is there a second? We got a second from Paul. All in favor of that motion, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. I move that we enter into executive session to discuss business strategy under Title I, Section 313, subsection A of the Vermont statutes. Is there a second?
With the obvious exception of the folks from London Middleburg.
With the good, thanks for that friendly amendment. Is there a second? Was that from you, Ross?
Sure. Yep.
Okay. You're seconding, Paul? Okay. Great. All right. So all in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Great. Thanks, everyone. Okay, Ashley, you have the floor.
Do we need to stop the recording, or we're good on that
I'm
front?
going to stop the recording.